Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a reaction video. Originally I had wanted to do a series of reaction videos off of the Netflix series Harry and Meghan. Currently I don't have the technology or the subscriptions or the copyright knowledge to be able to pull that off. The clip I'm going to be reviewing today is 10 biggest reveals from Harry and Meghan's Netflix docuseries. So let's take a look. I'm going to start with Meg's perplexed face, apparently. All right, let's go.
I wasn't just being thrown to the wolves, I was being fed to the wolves.
Welcome to
All right, we're off to a great start. I'll admit at this point I am 1.5 episodes into the docuseries. And Meg has no shortage of these little catchy phrases, such as the one that she just spit out about not being thrown to the wolves. She's being fed to the wolves. I imagine she finds herself quite clever in coming up with these things because they are intended to add an air. I am assuming they're intended to add an air of drama and basically build her victimhood. And victimhood is the new celebrity. It will get you famous. All right, let's get back to the video.
Ms. Mojo, and today we're examining the 10 biggest reveals from Harry and Meghan's Netflix docuseries.
When you would expect support from the people closest, we got the opposite.
For this list, we'll be looking at the most interesting things we learned from this 6-part limited biographical series. Which of these revelations shocked you the most? Let us know in the comments. The early days of their relationship. Sometimes we have plans for ourselves, but then fate steps in with something more special.
I had a career, I had my life.
It struck me immediately upon seeing this scene when I watched episode 1 of the docuseries, the soundtrack backing her life. Not a modern soundtrack. I'm guessing, I don't know this for a fact, but listen for yourselves and tell me what you think in the comments below, but it sounds like the song was plucked straight out of the civil rights and women's rights era. One can only guess why.
I had my path. Then came age.
In 2016, Meghan Markle was planning on spending the summer traveling, having fun, and just enjoying life as a single woman. But that changed after Harry saw a photo of her on a friend's Instagram.
It's just that whole thing, it starts like with dog ears.
Dog ears. And
that's what he saw of me.
that was the first thing I was like, who is that?
The two were put in touch, went on a date, for which he was late, and then another. Needless to say, they clicked, bonding.
For which he was late. Yes. She made him feel like absolute crap for that, and then she herself turned up late for their second date.
Over their shared passion for volunteer work and service. That summer, they traveled to Botswana together, despite most of their relationship up until that point having been long distance.
To start with, we were sitting next to each other, and then we progressed to holding hands, and then we squeezed in a kiss, in amid the bumps, and then everything felt totally normal and natural.
Pretty soon, she implemented a rule that they should see each other roughly every 2 weeks. The rest, as they say, is history. Princess Diana and the press. Prince Harry describes his childhood as a joyful one, but he also remembers how the press's ubiquitous presence negatively impacted him. His mother, Princess Diana, was also particularly affected by it and worked extremely hard to protect her son's privacy.
We've had 15 cameras following us today.
I haven't been one of those.
No, but as a parent, I want to protect children. Thank you.
Harry explains that the press's treatment of her marked him deeply. He recalls not only the Panorama interview where she discussed it, but also seeing it firsthand, especially.
The first episode of the docuseries spends a lot of time going over Harry's relationship with the press and what it was like for him to grow up in that goldfish bowl. And from this telling, far, far, far from a normal childhood with a normal sense of life and reality, and who is actually paying attention and why, and just how important anybody paying attention at all actually is or is not. All right, back to the video.
Once she left the institution. And after her untimely death, his own bad experiences with the media only increased, which made grieving while growing up extra difficult. Because of it all, he worried that he'd never find a partner.
I remember thinking, how can I ever find someone who is willing and capable to be able to withstand all the baggage that comes with being with me?
Of course, he eventually met Markle, who, interestingly enough, he compares to his mom.
So, at 1.5 episodes in, it seems that Harry didn't do a lot to prepare Meghan for what it would be like to live life amongst the royals. One would guess that you have a sense of what meeting a monarchy or royalty might be like or should be like. She seems to come across as not only as completely clueless as to what might that be like. He just talked about looking for the perfect person and was looking for someone who could handle that sort of baggage, as he called it, the intensity of having paparazzi and media following you 24/7 and a whole nation or world being involved or interested in your every move, you know. If he didn't give her that guidance, shame on him. If she was that clueless and didn't do any research, then shame on her.
She has the same compassion, she has the same empathy, she has the same confidence. She has this warmth about her.
Racist news coverage and invasions of privacy. For as long as possible,
he just said she had the same confidence, the same this, the same that as his mother. Clearly not.
Meghan and Harry kept their relationship secret so that they could get to know one another without outside noise. But news of their romance eventually broke.
There was a frenzy happening, and it almost felt like all the things we were nervous about of it getting out. Okay, don't worry, it's fine. And then that very quickly changed.
While the reaction was initially positive, the coverage of Markle soon took a disturbing turn as her biracial identity was used to spin racist stories in the press and on social media. Though the palace's advice was reportedly to ignore it, Harry wound up putting out a statement condemning the behavior.
And some of the members of the family was like, right, but my wife had to go through that. So why should your girlfriend be treated any differently? Why should you get special treatment? Why should she be protected? And I said, the difference here is the race element.
This online intimidation was
Blech. 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 So Harry just told us all, because Meghan is biracial, and for no other reason. For no other reason than the fact that she is biracial, she deserves special treatment. If you feel differently or interpreted that differently, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Let me know.
Was compounded by blatant invasions of privacy and physical harassment as well. Markle notably described paparazzi being everywhere, stalking her Toronto residence and her place of work.
So I would say to the police,
at some point, I imagine I'll get used to her complaining about the paparazzi. But to imagine that she didn't know that in a general sense, Harry's mother she died because of paparazzi, one could say. She's, again, not very bright. or just an idiot.
If any other woman in Toronto right now said to you, I have 6 grown men who are sleeping in their cars around my house and following me everywhere that I go and I feel scared, wouldn't you say that it was stalking? And they said, yes, but there's really nothing we can do because of who you're dating.
A threat on her life.
I would love to see proof of that. Enough said.
Eventually led to her getting security. The wedding guest list. You may remember having heard the name Samantha Markle a lot as Harry and Meghan's 2018 wedding date approached. Meghan's half-sister, who the Duchess maintains she barely knows, was reportedly speaking to the press and spreading false stories, though she disputes these claims.
I hadn't had her fall out with her. We didn't have a closeness to be able to have that. And I wanted a sister.
It turns out the drama ran deeper than we knew, and sadly went so far as to affect Meghan and Harry's wedding guest list. Meghan was advised not to invite her niece Ashley.
How do we explain that this half-sister isn't invited to the wedding, but that the half-sister's daughter is?
Though she's Samantha's biological daughter, Ashley and her brother were raised by their paternal grandparents. Despite that, and the fact that she and Meghan were extremely close, the optics were complicated to explain, so she wasn't invited to attend the big day.
I can't wait to find out the details of this. I'm not sure what episode, but I have not come across this part of the story yet. Fascinating for sure.
Relationship suffered afterwards, but they've since thankfully reconnected.
I miss so much of Archie's life, but it doesn't necessarily feel like it. I think we immediately kind of had this bond.
Meghan's father. Shortly before their wedding, Meghan and Harry were informed that there'd be a report coming out stating that her father Thomas had sold staged photos to the press. Though he denied the claim, Meghan found his behavior on the phone to be odd and didn't trust what he was saying.
And it felt really cagey. I was like, it doesn't make sense, it doesn't make sense.
The story broke the next day, alleging he had accepted $100,000 for the aforementioned pictures. According to Meghan, he was dodging her calls while talking to TMZ in the aftermath, and she found out through the tabloids that he wouldn't be attending her wedding.
Calling.
This is not him saying, oh, I don't want to be there.
No, I get it.
And the world is watching this drama play out.
The situation deteriorated when he was hospitalized. Things then got even worse after the wedding, as he continued speaking to the press about her and the royal family.
Of course, it's incredibly sad what happened. She had a father before this, and now she doesn't have a father.
Rising popularity and negative reaction. Harry and Meghan's wedding was described as a joyful, love-filled celebration, and many were extremely hopeful that their union would usher in a new, more modern monarchy.
It needed
Why?
boost of energy,
He's the spare.
a modernization that would speak to a new generation of people.
And after they tied the knot, they were indeed quite popular. However, per Harry, this shifted the balance and took attention away from more senior royals, which is something the institution didn't want. That's when the coverage of Meghan took an insidious turn.
The aim was to put them in a box or make them irrelevant.
She was torn down in the tabloids, critiqued for every small thing, down to the way she'd hold her baby bump. The documentary notably shows how similar stories about her and Kate Middleton were spun differently, painting her in a negative light. The coverage of Markle also often had racist under- and overtones.
This is how it was covered for her. This is how it was covered for her. If you don't see the difference and understand why it's being reported that way.
All right. I can say based on the photography, I see the difference in why it was reported differently. So let's go back for a second here and see that picture. All right, so I've got the picture up on the screen for you, and this is my take on the difference in the media coverage. I'm not a mother. I've never been pregnant. So this is solely my opinion and based on nothing other than what I am observing in these images and my life experience as a background. So I see Kate. Well, she's got her hand on her pregnant belly. She's got her hand on her pregnant belly, and that's the way I see most women who touch their pregnant bellies, especially in public, touch their pregnant bellies. Meghan, on the other hand, shot for shot, 2 different outings, whereas Kate is photographed in one, 2 hands on the belly. I'm going to say I have not seen a lot of that out in the world. Here and there, yes. Time to time, yes. Every single time I see them, or every single image, again, not in my experience. And so maybe the tabloid press and the Brits were picking up on that as well. So, all right, let's get back to where we were.
In a negative light. The coverage of Markle also often had racist under- and overtones.
This is how it was covered for her. This is how it was covered for her. If you don't see the difference and understand why it's being reported that way, then
the why it's being reported that way, that's a big part of my problem with their narrative as well. They claim to be able to see inside the hearts, souls, and minds of every person, every entity, every organization who reports in a negative light. They know, they feel, they understand wholeheartedly the motivations of every single one of these people. I find that extraordinary, quite frankly. The notion that they know why, or are assuming why, perhaps. I would venture to say that they are assuming, and they are assuming a reason that fits in with what? Oh, a narrative. And what does that narrative do? Oh, it brings them a lot of money. Victimhood.
I can't help you.
Planting stories in Meghan's mental health. When Meghan realized that many were believing the things printed about her in the tabloids, her mental health suffered to the point where she fell into a depression.
It was like, all of this will stop if I'm not here. And that was the scariest thing about it, is it was such clear thinking.
According to her, however, she was not permitted to seek help at the time. Despite her being negatively affected by the stories, the institution is said to have done nothing to rein in the press's negativity. This is interesting when you consider how, as Harry describes it, the family's communication teams often end up working against one another.
It's a dirty game. You know, there's leaking, but there's also planting of stories.
If one household needs to squash a negative story, they'll give the tabloid something about someone else. This is something Harry and William had apparently promised they'd never do. But it seems it's essentially what ended up happening.
And to see my brother's office copy the very same thing that we promised the two of us would never ever do, that was heartbreaking.
Taking legal action. We've talked about the rift between Meghan and her dad.
I'm very curious to find out about what he just accused his brother of, really. I hope he offers some evidence to support that, because that's his brother. That's an awful thing to have to say about a sibling or anyone that you love and care about.
Dad, and how things only got worse post-wedding, as Thomas was repeatedly speaking to the press. So, on the advice of senior royals, Markle...
I spaced out a little bit and didn't read that quote from the dad.
Only got worse.
Alright, Meghan Markle's dad slams his daughter's sense of superiority and warns he is about to unload on the royal family in a scathing new interview. Oh, I hope he does. I hope he does. Sense of superiority? Absolutely, in my opinion, everything I've observed so far, not just in this docuseries, but literally everything. But there was one very telling moment in episode 2. And again, I'm only halfway through episode 2, but it is primarily focusing on Meghan and how she has grown up. But there's a scene where she's spending the weekend with her father after divorce, and he's trying to communicate with her, and she's got her sort of back to him, and he's trying to talk to her, or he's trying to get her to turn around and take a picture or something like that. And the look that she finally turns and gives him, it looks, well, it looks like a learned look. Looks like something she's an expression or a reaction that she's used to using, and one that she's also used to encountering, because it doesn't suit her. It's beyond her years, but it clearly conveys a sense of superiority. What is the word he calls her? I think at that point her father is calling her determined, I think is the word.
Post-wedding, as Thomas was repeatedly speaking to the press. So, on the advice of senior royals, Markle wrote him a letter, which was then leaked by the Daily Mail. This led to the Sussexes deciding to sue.
You know this is unlawful, so we have to draw the line. We have to take legal action.
The legal case continued even after they stepped down as senior working royals and moved to the United States. And though Meghan won in the end, the litigation caused her a lot of stress.
When all of this started, I had no children.
Ugh. The last thing I want to do ever is see an image or a scene like this one that we're about to go into now. I haven't seen this. This must be from another episode as well. But here she sits, being primped and massaged and not having to lift a finger. And she's complaining while... This is why people don't like you, Meghan.
And now I have birthed two and lost one, and it's still going on.
Sadly, while this was ongoing, she suffered a miscarriage, something which she shared publicly a few months later. Of course, there's no saying what exactly caused it. However, Prince Harry strongly believes the Daily Mail's actions played a part.
Bearing in mind the stress that caused, the lack of sleep, and the timing of the pregnancy, how many weeks in she was, I can say from what I saw, that miscarriage was created by what they were trying to do to her.
If she was okay.
You add this on top of just trying to be a new mom or trying to be a newlywed, it's, yeah, well, I guess, and also thank you for asking, because not many people have asked if I'm okay.
Its spread, coupled with the backlash they had already faced following their son Archie's birth and a lack of support, marked a turning point for the Sussexes. They ultimately decided to move to Canada, a plan that the Duke of Sussex notably believes the institution leaked to the tabloids.
And the key piece of that story that made me aware that the contents of the letter between me and my father had been leaked was that we were willing to relinquish our Sussex titles. That was the giveaway.
In the aftermath, he and Meghan announced that they'd be taking on reduced roles. News that Harry insists didn't blindside the Queen, as reports had suggested. He also claims his attempt to arrange a meeting afterwards was rejected, only to then be scheduled at a time when Meghan would be in Canada. He believes that that was a deliberate move on the institution's part. The meeting itself was apparently tense and not incredibly productive.
It was terrifying to have my brother scream and shout at me, and my father say things that just simply weren't true, and my grandmother, quietly sit there and sort of take it all in.
Leaving and rebuilding. In that meeting we just mentioned, things between Harry and his brother William were strained, and a wedge of sorts had formed. When stories came out claiming that William was driving the Sussexes out, a joint statement was released denying the rumor. However, Harry was only informed of said statement's existence after its publication, despite his name being on it.
Within 4 hours, they were happy to lie to protect my brother. And yet, for 3 years, they were never willing to tell the truth to protect us.
As he and Meghan saw how quickly the institution protected William, something it hadn't done for them, it became clear to him that they needed to leave. Despite him making the call, she bore the brunt of the backlash in the press and online, where coordinated hate attacks were launched.
She never asked to leave.
Coordinated.
I was the one that had to see it for myself. But it's...
Of course she didn't ask to leave. She wanted to be a royal. And then she had to play the sympathy card because, well, she had to.
It's misogyny at its best.
In the end, after a stint in Canada, the Sussexes moved to the US. It wasn't a simple...
I gotta hear that again.
I was the one that had to see it for myself, but it's misogyny at its best.
In the end, after a stint in Canada, the Sussexes moved to the US. It wasn't a simple journey, but they had their daughter Lilibet and have built the life they always wanted together with her, their son Archie, and their other loved ones.
So I ask you to raise a glass to the astounding assurance that now life begins, and the everlasting knowing that above all, love wins.
So there are some things that are fairly obvious after watching 1.5 episodes of this docuseries. Harry absolutely is crazy about Meghan, and I think Meghan genuinely is crazy about Harry, but I don't think either of them is 100% honest about who they are. I don't think that's because they even know. Harry least of all. He mostly comes across as, it's very sad, but it makes sense. He comes across as having just a ton of insecurity, and has the feeling of the spare. I am the spare, the heir and the spare, with his brother William being the heir. And again, that points to a very difficult and not normal way of growing up, which leads to a not normal worldview. So that wraps up my take on this video, and hopefully I'll be back more with soon, more reaction videos and others. Check back soon, subscribe, like, and I'll see you soon. Bye.